Now playing on Netflix, The Hawk. From the mind of Will Ferrell.
Oh, mama, I'm back.
Comes a new original series.
Get ready. That's it. Did I stutter?
When an iconic pro golfer
Lonnie,
Hawk!
takes one last swing at greatness,
you were a big shot golfer.
I still am a big shot golfer.
no one
Dad, I'm the Hawk now.
will stand in his way.
That's how it's done.
The Hawk. Now playing only on Netflix.
Hey parents, how do you make smarter choices for your kids' college today? That's where Sally can help. With Sally, you can find scholarships, funding options, tools, and guidance all in one place. And if you need a loan, Sally has options for different families and different situations. College is only worth it if you do it right. So don't just help your kid go. Help them go smarter. Sally.com/GoParents.
Hello and welcome to the new season of The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster Sam Baker. My guest today is Sarah Hiscox. Now a counsellor for NA and AA, amongst other things, the first 3.5 decades of Sarah's life were marked by turbulence and addiction. Sarah was just 8 years old when she first experienced the oblivion drugs can bring. In that case, through sleeping pills, mogadon, if you can believe it. And a young mother by the time she became addicted to heroin. By that time, she had spent many years suffering from bulimia. In her new memoir, The Beginning and End of Everything, Sarah looks candidly at the childhood experiences that shaped her and how the hole inside my being led her to lose her marriage and custody of her children. Somehow, after repeated relapses, thanks to her sister Belinda, then ex-husband Renshaw, and best friend Davina McCall, she got it all back. She's now been clean for 24 years. And if you're looking for hope when it feels like all hope has gone, you will find it here.
It's so difficult to explain if you haven't had experience of it, but it's so much bigger than anything else. If it was easy, people would never relapse. People would use drugs and they wouldn't get addicted and it would be easy. I can only describe it. It felt to me, I don't believe this, but this is how it felt. It was almost like a malevolent spirit would possess me, making me do things that I really wouldn't do if I wasn't using drugs. And then one day it left.
Sarah joined me to talk about the lifelong impact of never feeling enough, the shame surrounding disordered eating, and the difficulty of caring for a parent who never cared for you. We also discussed sisterhood and the power of female friendship, how she finally got off the misery go-round, overcoming her personal committee of critics, and finding purpose at 50. Should give you a bit of a content warning. During this conversation, we discuss anorexia, bulimia, addiction, and suicidal ideation. What was it that made you decide, kind of in your mid-50s, I'm going to write it all down?
My job had finished after COVID and I had always wanted to write a book, but I felt it was always too close to me to do it. So I had a friend who had done a writing course and she really persuaded me to do it. And so I thought, well, I'll give it a go. I mean, I'd never written anything before. And I always felt that if you wanted to write a book, you had to be, you would have had to have read English at university and then been a journalist. I thought that, there was a route that you had to take. If you didn't take that route, you wouldn't be taken seriously at all. So it was a case of that not feeling enough imposter. I can do this. I can just about, write a letter to my daughter's school complaining about her, losing her sock. So I thought I'd give it a go and I gave it a go and I really enjoyed it. I mean, whether or not I was any good at it, I don't know, but I did enjoy it. And so I did the main course, which was a memoir writing course, and kind of got a story arc together. And I thought, yeah, I could do this. And I did feel a strong kind of will to want to shine a light on their issues with self-esteem, which I feel leads into the areas with women. Obviously mine was extreme. and not everybody goes to drug addiction. But there's definitely areas around the way one looks, their body, I really suffer from, that I wanted to shine a light on as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the book is ostensibly about your addiction and recovery, but really, right from the very, very, very first sentence, it is a book about self-esteem, isn't it? And self-loathing.
Yeah, absolutely. And from such a young age, that being aware of, obviously I didn't have the EQ to know what it was then when I was a child, but looking back, one can see it quite clearly from, starting off with being a fantasy. But, I said in the book that I told everyone at school when I was 8 that my father would be on board, because I just felt
that made me laugh so much.
Because being me, just obviously it was attention seeking as well. But then why are you attention? You're attention seeking because you don't feel enough. Just coming in as Sarah, that's not a big enough story. So I felt I had to come in as Bjorn Borg's daughter to sort of help me make friends and being a popular group, And so you can see from such a young age that was an issue. And I think that, like I said, I think for a lot of women, there's a shame attached to it. We don't want to talk about the self-loathing, the way that we talk to ourselves, because it's shameful for a lot of people. But the only way to get around that is by shining a light on it, I think.
One of the things that you say a few times in the book that really resonated with me, and I'm sure will resonate with so many women, is that you talk about the committee of critics in your head. I think it's definitely a committee. It's like, can you remember the first time you heard that committee?
God, that's a good question. Can I remember the first time? I mean, when I was actually aware of it, probably wasn't until I had bulimia, because I remember how vicious those voices were. I mean, I'm sure I had it before, but I don't have a memory of saying to myself, you're this, you're that. But I do very much remember with the bulimia, the very violent, aggressive messages that I told myself, which, if you spoke to a child like that, you'd be arrested. If you spoke to your friends like that, they'd never speak to you again. But yet, so many women I know, certainly myself anyway, the way that I spoke to myself it was so violent. So I suppose it was at that time that I really remember the voices and how present they were from then on.
I'm just thinking, it's always, once you know a story, I always have to stop myself jumping through, so that it makes sense to the listeners. Tell us, I think we probably need you to tell us a little bit about your childhood, your very little childhood up to the point when you were prescribed mogadon for your nightmares. Unbelievable.
70s parenting.
I know. Oh my God. So tell us about little Sarah.
So, when I look back at her now, I sort of want to give her a hug, really. But I think my mother was an alcoholic. And also, I think possibly addicted to prescription pills. There was certainly a lot of pills around. My parents, my mother she found affection very difficult. We did not get on. I can see now that she did the best that she could with what she had. I spent a long time resenting her and blaming her, but I saw quite quickly how that really didn't serve me. But she really wasn't very well, I don't think. She was 21 when she got married. She had me when she was 22. So young. My dad had been her first boyfriend. She'd had no life experience at all. And obviously in the 60s and 70s, people just didn't talk about their feelings and stuff. So it was a difficult childhood in as much as there wasn't much affection there. And she prized being thin and beautiful over everything. And she had a mantra that she would say to me and my sister, which was, laugh and the whole world laughs with you, cry and you cry alone, which is not great to tell your child. Just smack a smile on and get on with it. And I suffered from nightmares when I was little. And she took me to a doctor. I was 8. He prescribed me mogadon, which, as you know, is a very powerful sleeping pill. I don't even think it's available on prescription anymore. I don't know.
No, it sounds like one of those things that's become a a generic that people talk about in a, take a mogadon and it will knock you out. And it's a very 70s.
Well, they were in our house, he prescribed me to them. She gave me to them. I'm pretty sure she took them herself. That, and there were always temazepam in the bathroom cabinets as well. And that was my sort of first taste of being able to escape my insides. Although I had no awareness of that then, I definitely do remember taking them and that feeling of warmth that they gave me that maybe I wasn't getting as a child from my parents. I escalated quite quickly from fantasy to sleeping pills, then to stronger an opioid called Palfium when I was about 12 or 13, which my father had.
So that was just in your bathroom cabinet?
I mean, that was an extremely powerful analgesic that, again, I don't think is available anymore. It's basically manufactured heroin. And I was coming back from school, helping myself to one of those pills, going up to my bedroom, kind of blissing out for an hour and a half, and then getting on with my homework. Nobody had no idea. My parents had no idea what was going on. So there had always been something that I was taking or using to escape how I felt on my insides. And I'm really keen not to make me sound like I'm blaming my parents, because like I said before, I really do believe that she couldn't have done any better. That was all she knew. I don't think she went to bed at night and think I've been a terrible mother. She really did do the best that she could with what she had. But it was just, for somebody who was an alcoholic and abusing prescription medication, there was only so much that she was capable of. That sort of took me up until my teenage years. And then that slid into bulimia, which was probably in many ways the worst of all my addictions. I would say even more than heroin, because it is so shameful. There is still, not from me, but I hear it outside, a sort of glamour around taking drugs. Whereas there is nothing glamorous about going home and eating 16 M&S shortbread and sticking your fingers down your throat, in a bathroom on your own. That's deeply shameful. And I still notice now there are so many more conversations about food disorders, anorexia in particular, but I really don't see that much around bulimia. And I'm pretty sure it's quite prevalent. I know a lot of my friends did it, and that was very difficult to live alongside with, because that kicked my self-esteem more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a moment you say in the book, which I think it kind of, if you don't have any experience of disordered eating, as we now call it, might feel quite shocking. I'm just going to kind of scroll through my notes, see if I can find it. But it made a lot of sense to me. You said, I longed for anorexia. The control required was something I could only aspire to. And I think that kind of ties in with what you were saying just now. It's like people talk about disordered eating. They talk about, anorexia. And people don't talk about bulimia because it's revolting.
It's a lack of control, which I think people find scary. So with anorexia, obviously it's an extremely dangerous disease. A lot of people don't recover from. So I'm not belittling it in any way, but there is real control around anorexia. It's, you have to control yourself to stop eating. I was unable to do that. And that loss of control of stuffing yourself is so revolting to so many people. It really is an anathema. And I just really don't want to talk about it. And I didn't really understand that, because I would say that a lot more people, certainly that I know, I've got no idea what the official figures are, but certainly in the people that I know, bulimia was far more prevalent than anorexia. And it's more of a secret, much more of a secret, because like I said, there's so much shame attached to it. And shame keeps things in dark corners. People don't want to talk about it. Again, when I went to treatment one time, there were some young girls with anorexia, and they definitely looked down on the people with bulimia.
When I was a student, I was bulimic. And I remember just once going to an OA meeting.
Yeah.
Just the once. And there was a real hierarchy.
Yeah.
The real hierarchy is like the overeaters looked down on you because you were a cheat.
Yeah.
And the anorexics looked down on you because you had no control.
Yeah, you were disgusting, like gross. That's still the case now. So that was really important for me if I was going to tell my story to include that. Also because I don't know if I would have become a drug addict had it not been for the bulimia. It stopped me from eating. I didn't have the control that the anorexics had. I needed something to stop me from eating, and heroin did that perfectly. And I felt at the beginning like I was in control of it. I thought, I'm not addicted to this. I can take or leave it. It's just that I'm choosing to take it at the moment. And then, of course, by the time that I realized I wasn't in control, it was sort of too late.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire. Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it. Okay.
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
What you were saying earlier about you don't want to blame your parents because obviously they were doing the best with, well, your mother, your dad wasn't around, was he? Were doing the best with what resources she had, which was not much. But that message that you were getting from her, and actually she had got from society and you were getting from society as well, that your value was in being thin. How much, I'm really interested in the extent to which those messages about being thin are a root cause, or actually whether it's about it's not about that at all. It's about all those other things.
The bulimia, the drug addiction, the pills, the fantasy are symptoms. They're not the cause. The cause was the low self-esteem, that void within me. That was causing me to try and find ways to fill it, to make me feel better about myself. And that's really all it was. I just was trying to find something outside of myself because I didn't believe that I had it within myself. It didn't occur to me that I had it within myself. So I had to go out and find something out of myself to fill that void because it was so painful living with it. And yet we saw that committee in one's head, that constant committee of your mind telling you that you're just not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, you're not clever enough, you're not funny enough. It could be so deafening at times. And what was weird was the more secure I seemed on the outside with a man that wanted to marry me, or the louder the horses were, because there was more to lose. So it was this sort of, I said in my book, it's like a misery go around, this constant feeling of never enough, and finding as I'm going around different things to try and fill the void.
It's something you say, in fact, I think it's near the end, but it might not be. I'm not going to dwell too much on Davina because there's more to you than your friendship with Davina. But also I'm conscious that every single time you do a newspaper interview, the headline is about Davina, not you. But there's something that you said, and I think it might have been when you were talking about motherhood. I can't remember. Anyway, I'd never had a goal. There was no plan to work towards. This was in relation to Davina's kind of, you had become a mother and Davina was on her trajectory to being a one-name TV celebrity. Yeah. And you said, I'd never had a goal. There was no plan to work towards. I didn't have a passion or ambition. And I wish my parents had given me some kind of direction, taken an interest in my future and helped me decide what I wanted to do with my life. I'd have loved to have gone to university, but the subject never came up. And you said at the beginning, you said you didn't think you could write a book because you hadn't been to university. And I'm just wondering, while you're talking about this, not that you didn't have ambition, but that ambition was probably sitting inside in the void, not being given an outlet, that you never had, nobody ever helped you find a purpose.
It was never discussed. And I just thought you just fell into one job into the next. I was working in a video film production company, and then I fell into something else, and then I fell into something else. And it was just a way to pay my rent. And there was no, like I said, there was no plan. Yeah, I wish I had university. I wish I had that, see all my three children one's still at university now. And I'm I'm so envious of that. So I wish I'd had that. I mean, it's not too late.
I say you can go.
I could go now.
Do it.
Well, maybe I will. But also there's that weird, it's sort of a double-edged sword, that ambition. When I was writing the book, when the press started coming in, it was very exciting because I thought, maybe nobody would want to read it, and the press were interested and they wanted to talk to me about it. And then I'd had a couple of knocks about an interview that hadn't gone so well, and I completely spiraled, and went back into I should never have done it. Who thinks that I could write? I'm an imposter. And I realized, and it's not a sudden realization, it's always been there, but I have to keep reminding myself that these things are all about ego. Is this me wanting to write a book so that I can finally say, see, I've succeeded. I've done something, see? I mean, I don't know if you're saying that too quite. My parents,
yourself.
Myself. Exactly, you're right. That stuff doesn't go away because of written a book and it may or may not be successful. It really is an inside job, the spirit rather than the ego. I mean, it sounds very woo-woo, but it's so true. Why do I want ambition? Do I want it because I want it for myself? I mean, both probably, and to be able to say, I've done something with my life, and again, I think a lot of women fall prey to that. They think that I remember being at a party once, I wasn't working at the time, and somebody asking, oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a mom, I look after my children. And he sort of looked at me condescendingly and said, oh, well, that's a job. And I thought, oh, fuck off, I didn't get paid for it. It was that feeling as, again, repeating myself, oh, it's not enough. It is enough. If you're all right with who you are as a person, those things are enough. So it is a struggle. I'm not fixed. I'm not cured. Haven't had some spiritual epiphany, and it's up and down all the time.
Sorry, my brain just did that menopause thing of completely flatlining, and I was going to ask you something, and then it just went right out of my head. Oh, I know what it was. I was going to say, it's part of the problem is that focus, isn't it, on what we do. So it's not, you never meet someone at a party and they'll say, I don't know. I mean, say, who are you? Would be a bit weird. You'd probably back away, wouldn't you? But at the same time, the first thing you ask someone is, what do you do? I mean, I definitely remember when I left my job editing magazines, it was hugely important to me that I wasn't the former anything, that nobody described me as the former editor of Red. And because my whole identity was wrapped up in that. And I think if you've also got a friendship group, so you've had a child at, what were you, 27 when you had your eldest, so actually that was for that group of people, for a London-y group of people, that's quite young to have a child.
Very young. I didn't have any friends who had children or were married at that time.
Yeah, so you're a bit out of sync with your friends. And plus you've got this, you've saddled yourself with a best friend who's literally, jetting around the world being fabulous.
Turning into a national treasure, yeah.
God love her. Do you think that contributed to the downward spiral?
What, the people that I was with?
Well, not so much. No, I'm not blaming the circle, but do you think that having a baby, being a bit rudderless, loving your husband, loving your son, but still having the void, do you think that, and then being out of sync with all these people who are busy being, did that contribute to the downward spiral with the heroin?
Definitely, because there's a higher bar to fall from. I was constantly comparing myself to other people. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. I don't look like that. I don't look like this. Maybe if I'd had a group of friends and I'd had friends that were all having babies at the same time, that would have helped. Honestly, Sam, I'm not sure, because that feeling was always there. And like I just said about the book, or, I've had other, albeit small, successes in my life since I got clean, and they really don't fill that void. You think they're going to. Every time I make that mistake of thinking, this is going to do it. This is going to fill the void. This one, it never does. Outside factors contribute, of course, but ultimately it was about how I felt on the inside. And no matter if I'd been the editor of Vogue or watching the tweenies with my 2-year-old son at home, that feeling was still the same, I think.
I'm really fascinated by it because it's that just one more thing, isn't it? It's another £7. It's if I just get that job, if I just get that pay rise. And we've all done that. And I was talking to somebody who's coming up in this series, and her having made the decision to step back from a big corporate job because it wasn't, she could finally see that it wasn't working for her. But now she's been very successful in the other thing that she's done. And I had a conversation with her, and now she's worried about the next thing not being as successful as the last thing. And it's exhausting. And I totally get it, but it's capitalism. It's, where does it start? Can you remember the very first time you compared yourself to someone else and found yourself wanting?
Yes, I can. It was when I was about 8, and I went to the school and told everyone I was Björn Borg. I made a friend, Rachel, and she was this very beautiful, olive-skinned, green-eyed beauty whose family were bohemian artists, and they were just so fabulous and so warm and loving and blousy and just fabulous. And I remember wanting to be her. I want her. I want to be her. I want her life. And maybe if I hung out with her and became her best friend and copied what she did, I would be like her. So I must have been 7 or 8 when that happened. And I remember I can picture Rachel and that house so clearly in my mind, and being so aware of, why isn't that my life? I want that. I want to be her. But not questioning it. Obviously, there was 7 or 8. And also with, my sister and I used to wish we had our cousin as our mother rather than our mother, because she was very affectionate. And, so again, there were lots of examples when I was a child of wanting to be other, just not wanting to be me, and not quite knowing why, and not knowing how to fix that.
I felt so much when I was reading your book, that kind of never being the one in the friendship group, being the other one, not being, like saying, Davina being ballistic and you wanting to be the ballistic one, but that wasn't how it worked. And I was like nodding along the whole time, because I think, it's, when something is so at the root of you, and, like you say, it's nobody's fault. It comes from when you're constantly trying to get a parent's attention and you can't get it for whatever reason because of something that happened to them. Yeah. And it just goes on and on and on and builds. And I'm not going to go through your whole addiction, because people can read the book to find out all about that. Once, Davina called you out and Davina and Renshaw got together to start trying to get you into recovery. Why do you think, it's really difficult, isn't it? Why do you think you call yourself a backslider, which means you kind of went to NA meetings, you went to an Alpha course, you went to, Priory, and you kept falling back, even though, like you say, by that point you had so much to lose. You had a husband you loved, you had 2 kids. It's like, I'm asking you to explain something you can't possibly explain. But why do you think you backslid so much? Yeah. And then ultimately, why do you think you stopped backsliding? Yeah. We'll do that later.
The reason I kept backsliding was because addiction is so incredibly powerful. I work in prisons, and I used to work in Holloway in the detox unit, and there are it's like a revolving door, that place. There are the same women coming in and out. Most of them have lost their children. Their children have been adopted by other families. Is it because they didn't love them or didn't care about them? No, it's because addiction is it's so difficult to explain if you haven't had experience of it, but it's so much bigger than anything else. If it was easy, then people would never relapse. People would use drugs and they wouldn't get addicted, and it would be easy. I can only describe it. It felt to me, I don't believe this, but this is how it felt. It was almost like a malevolent spirit would possess me, making me do things that I really wouldn't do if I wasn't using drugs. And then one day it left. I just thought that I couldn't live without it. And I wanted to. I didn't have a fun time using heroin. I wasn't enjoying myself. I woke up every day, Sam, I swear to you, every day thinking today's going to be, I'm not going to do it today. And then something would switch in me and I'd use. And then that feeling of shame and guilt was so huge, it gave me no other option than to keep using. And I thought about taking my own life because the pain was so huge of what I'd done to my children and my husband. But I think you need courage, and I didn't have the courage to do that. So I just hoped that the drugs would take me sooner rather than later, because I just couldn't seem to get clean. I'd been given all this help, all this support, and yet I couldn't do it. Like, I didn't know what the answer was, but I did keep trying. And I think, to answer the second part of your question, that was the answer. I never stopped trying. And all the rehabs and all the meetings and all the talking to other people who are going through the same thing, and it slowly chips away. Some people are very lucky and they have, a huge moment in their life where an epiphany where they think, I'm going to stop. I've surrendered and I'm stopping. That never happened to me. I just kept chipping away until I stopped. And it wasn't, I'd had terrible consequences. I'd overdosed. I'd lost my children. And I think those things are like bricks in a wall, and you're building this bigger and bigger wall until you get there. You get to the top eventually. But it was the keep trying, I think, that helped me in the end. I think
the therapy that helped you get clean and stay clean was something completely different, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think I had come to a point by that stage in my life where I say in the book, I think in addiction, exit signs flash up, and you can ignore them or you go through those exit signs. But if you ignore them, you don't know when another one's coming. And I think I saw this as an exit sign, and I went through it. And I think that the years preceding that point had led to this point. And I was ready. And, the NLP was incredibly helpful in reframing triggers that I had in using, namely the way I spoke to myself and this self-esteem.
NLP, just in case you don't know, is neuro-linguistic programming. And I thought it was interesting that the first thing that worked ultimately, backed up with the NA meetings and all the other stuff, was the thing that kind of, it's a trauma therapy, isn't it? That kind of, that actually goes back to the first thing that dug at the root cause, which was, like you say, which takes us back to the void.
Yeah. Absolutely, it was. But I think I'd heard that before in rehab and therapy. And I don't think any of it was particularly new to me. It was just possibly the timing of it, when you're ready to hear things. I was at a festival last year with a friend of mine who's a therapist, and she was asking about addiction, and she was saying, where does it come from? And I was explaining that in my case, it comes from a lack of self-esteem. And I said to her, I've lived with it all my life and dealt with it in a very destructive way. But now I've accepted that that's the core of who I am, that I just don't feel enough. But that's okay. I've got tools to manage it now. And she said to me, who told you that? I said, what do you mean? Who told me what? She said, who told you that you're not good enough? And I said, I did. And she said, what if it's not true? And it was like a little light bulb in my head. Now, I would have heard that at other times throughout my using and recovery, but for some reason that made so much sense to me at that point. And I thought, why does it have to be true? I've been lying to myself all these years. Am I going to continue to do it? It's up to me. I am the controller of my own mind. I can choose whether to believe that utter shit or not. And that was quite a turning point for me in the way that I realized how important it was, self-belief and what you tell yourself, the messages that you tell yourself. So I'm not going to say that I don't feel good enough anymore. Or when those messages come in, I know they're lying. I don't have to believe them if I don't want to. I can choose to entertain them or not.
But you have to be in quite a powerful place, don't you?
Yeah. So like I was saying, the other week with a couple of things knocked me, and then I spiraled out and I couldn't do it. But then I could in the end. I knew how to get back. It's a process.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
I mean, one of the things I was wondering when I was reading it, because the book stops in 2009 when you've got clean, and it's not a spoiler to say that, and you remarried your husband. So it's got, it is ultimately an incredibly hopeful story. But one of the things that I was wondering afterwards was a thing I hear quite a lot from people who've experienced eating disorders or, all sorts of things, is that when they go into perimenopause, it's like they're hit by a truck of a lot of those things again. So there are a lot of studies showing resurgences of disordered eating during perimenopause in the late 40s and 50s. And so I wondered, when you hit perimenopause, were you rocked? Or are your coping mechanisms so solid that you were just like in charge?
I mean, I was rocked in the way of, I got night sweats and I became very irritable. I don't remember going into that food. I'm really vigilant about food now, because I would say, in addiction, they say you have a primary and a secondary addiction. And you would read my book and maybe think, oh, well, heroin was my primary addiction. That's what everybody's talking about. But it's not. Food was my primary. Heroin was my secondary. So I have to be really, really vigilant around food, because I know how destructive it can be, and I know how it can make me feel about myself. So I'm really careful about that stuff. I'm not on any weird diets. I'm not wheat intolerant. I eat dairy. I eat sugar. I'm really careful about not denying myself. And so menopause was difficult in the way that it's difficult for women if they're irritable and all that stuff. But no, around my self-esteem, it was as it always was. I don't think it needs any help, really. Being down on myself, so I don't remember that. No, not particularly.
How old was your mum when she died?
God, she must have been about 63, so young. And she was in a terrible state by the end. She'd had her leg amputated. And it was so sad, because I had a happy ending and she never got that. And I really wanted it for her. And although half of me was angry with her, because I thought, you could have such a great life. You've got children and grandchildren that love you, but she just wasn't interested. She didn't want to have to excuse her drinking to anyone or be made to feel bad about it. It was very difficult in the end with Mum. And I, when I look back at her now, I just feel so much empathy for her. It must have been so difficult, because I had so much help, Sam. I was falling over the amount of help I had, and she never had any of that. Although we tried at the end, but she just wasn't interested.
Did your relationship with her reach any kind of resolution?
Not really, no. I mean, she was drunken to the end and in denial until the end. There was no chance of any kind of reconciliation. I mean, I saw her. I did have a relationship with her, but it was always on her terms because of her drinking. And my sister and I would get called in the middle of the night she lived in Norfolk, from the Norwich hospital, saying, your mother's had a fall and she's in ICU, you've got to come in the middle of the night. And we'd feel so resentful about it. And then you get there and you see this sort of scarecrow of a woman. I mean, the alcohol had absolutely ravaged her. And the doctors at one point said the only thing keeping her alive is the sugar in the alcohol. It was she was in a terrible state. And so there was no real chance for resolution. That could have only happened if she'd have got sober, but she didn't want to. And you have to accept that. Some people don't. Every day of my using, I wanted to be clean. Every day I wanted to not be. Every day that I was using drugs, I wanted to not be using drugs. I don't know if that was the same for my mom. I really don't.
I mean, you've got a good relationship with your sister now, haven't you?
She's always been so strong, my sister. And it's extraordinary, isn't it, that you can have the same parenting, but you can have such different experiences. But she's been really supportive about the book, because a lot of it, I was worried, like, have I remembered it right? I don't want to be making something up. I don't want to do a salt path. I was like, oh God, did that happen? I was like, so I got her to read it, and she was like, no, it's bang on. It's exactly right. And so I was I felt vindicated by that. Do you know what I mean? That she had the same experience, but it had affected her in a different way, not a destructive way.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's that whole thing that people say about memoir, that you can take 3 siblings who are all sat around the same table on the same day with the same parents, and they'll all have a different memory of it.
So funny, isn't it? I mean, she just is so capable, my sister. She's always worked to support her family. She's such an impressive woman. I mean, she's my younger sister. And yeah, her life experience has been very different from mine. But she's such an important person in my life, and definitely around this memoir stuff, because I've got nobody else to ask about it. I don't really speak to my dad. My mum's not around. So Belinda's the only person that, we're the only people that share that history.
And you haven't sugarcoated any of it, have you? I mean, you're tough on yourself, is what I mean, in relation to her. And when you were at your lowest, you were a bloody nightmare, weren't you?
Bloody horrible. Yeah. And the fact is, I would be, I don't know, I have to take responsibility for that. I don't feel poor me. I felt very guilty for a long time about what I'd done to the children, Rachel. Now I don't feel guilty. I feel sad about it. I feel sad that it happened, because it was sad, and it is sad that happened. But, looking forward, I've got these 3 amazing children that have, luckily it happened so long ago that they don't have any memory of it. The older 2, obviously, the younger one was born when I was clean, but I'd be naive to think that it wasn't my using cast any kind of shadow on them. But they're pretty incredible individuals. And I'm aware of taking responsibility for my behavior. Nobody else did that. Nobody else behaved. It was me.
So what does life look like now? You're 58, you've been clean, 24 years?
Nearly 25 years, yeah.
Written an amazing book. You're working in prisons and...
Yeah, I just like to carry on doing that. I really enjoy writing. I'd like to carry on writing. I get a lot from working in the prisons. I carry on to do that. My son's getting married at the weekend, which is very exciting, to the most beautiful girl. So hopefully I might be a grandmother soon. So I'm going to be able to spend lots of time doing that. It's a lot more hopeful than it was, my future, rather than when I was using. There is a future now.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to ask you the questions I always ask at the end. Okay. What is your emotional age?
Oh, God, that's such a good question. Do you know the figure that came into my head straight away was 38? I don't know why, but I'm going to go with that.
I think I know why that is.
Why?
Tell us why that is.
Well, because that's when I got clean, nearly. That's around the time I got clean. Oh, God, that's so interesting. And it just completely came up.
I love that question so much. The answers are so fascinating.
Oh, my God, that's so... Because I didn't know you were going to ask me that. And that figure just popped into my head. Crazy. Yeah,
that's so interesting. Give us a book recommendation. It can be anything at all.
Oh, God, I've just read the most fabulous book called The Left and the Lucky by Willie Vlotan. And apparently he's a huge writer in America. And it is just the most touching, heartfelt, beautifully told story about a painter and decorator that takes this little boy under his wing, and the dialogue and the characters. I mean, I would die to be able to have written a book like that. I couldn't recommend it more highly.
Brilliant. What advice would you give younger women?
Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. Definitely speak gently to yourself. Speak to yourself like you would a small child.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, what we can see with hindsight.
Yeah.
And how much of your understanding, of anyone's understanding of the things the crazy things they do in the 20s and 30s is getting to a point where you can look back and see.
Exactly.
Who is an older woman who inspires you?
Who is an older woman? God, that's interesting because I don't really have any older women around me, I mean, I have friends that are in their sort of 60s and 70s. I had an aunt, well, that's not true. She was my husband's aunt called Lindsay, who, when his mum left when he was quite small, took a huge part in looking after him and raising him. She died last year, but she was definitely the woman, the older. She was 80 something when she died, and I hugely looked up to her.
What's your superpower?
Ooh. I like to think that I'm able to make people feel at their ease, that I'm friendly. I don't want to be one of those like cool, nonchalant, louche. I want people to feel that I'm friendly. Is that a superpower?
Yes,
Okay,
totally. Totally it is. And I'm sure if I'd asked you that question about 25 years ago, you just said you didn't have one.
Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. That's good. That's progress then.
Yeah, totally. And last one, how many fucks do you give?
None. Well, one.